اللهم صل على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وأصحابه أجمعين. يا أيها الذين آمنوا اتقوا الله حق تقاته ولا تموتن إلا وأنتم مسلمون. يا أيها الناس اتقوا ربكم الذي خلقكم من نفس واحدة وخلق منها زوجها وبث منهما رجالا كثيرا ونساء واتقوا الله الذي تساءلون به والأرحام إن الله كان عليكم رقيبا. أما بعد. In chapter 94, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in verses 5 and 6, أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم, says فَإِنَّ مَعِ الْعُسْرِ يُسْرًا. إِنَّ مَعِ الْعُسْرِ يُسْرًا. The scholars of tafsir focus on firstly the Arabic grammar of these two verses. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala stating, for verily with hardship comes ease. And then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala repeats the verse and says, surely with hardship comes ease. So the scholars of tafsir say that al-usr, the hardship here, is in the definite form, because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala uses al and yusr. But the al and usr. But the yusr is in nakira, it's in indefinite form, doesn't have the ma'rifah, doesn't have the al with it. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is referring, in their estimation, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is referring to the same hardship. That the hardship is the same, but the ease is different. And this is also supported by the hadith of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam when he said to his companions, giving them the good news, that one hardship will not overcome two eases. Indicating that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam is giving the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam firstly the good news that with his mission that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given him, that no matter how difficult it is, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is always going to help the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. That Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is always going to provide an ease for him after a period of difficulty. So this is positivity, it's an optimism for the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam that he needs to continue. And this came early on in the mission of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, that despite everything that he struggles through, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will help him out. And this is the same message that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is giving to us, the believers, today. So it was not only specific to the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, it was also for his followers, the companions, that no matter how difficult life is, no matter what challenges we face, there will always be an ease or a comfort or a way out of that difficulty. And subhanAllah, if you have a look at the difficulties that we go through in our lives here in Australia, in Sydney, it's nothing compared to the difficulties that Muslims are going through overseas. For example, in Syria today, and the devastation and destruction and the carnage that they are suffering today is nothing compared to what we are going through today. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to provide the ease for them sooner rather than later. And it's crazy how the world is in the state it is today, where violence just continues and no one wants it to stop. That it seems that the vested interests that are out there just want this to continue. But we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to provide them the help and support that they need to stop this devastation and death and destruction. But if we look specifically then to our difficulties that especially our youth are facing today, and the challenges that we face as a minority living in this country, then firstly, one of the challenges that we all face, doesn't matter where we are, is the temptations for the nafs, the temptations whether it's related to premarital relations, having boyfriends and girlfriends, premarital intercourse, whether it is the temptation to rip the system off. And we had just in the media a few weeks ago, last week, this home care ward, where people are supposedly getting money for looking after fake phantom kids and getting paid for it, getting $80,000, $90,000, $100,000, $110,000 a year for doing absolutely nothing. Whereas the rest of us mugs have to go to work and pay our taxes and do it legally. Whereas they get away with just ripping the system off. I look after your kids, you look after my kids, and we claim, we fill out these timesheets, we fill out these forms, and get paid for it. Those are all temptations, those are from shaitan. That is from the nafs, to do the wrong thing, to make a quick buck, to make easy money. It's just like selling drugs, making easy money. This is just a different way. And they say, no, we're not hurting anybody. Subhanallah. And then there's also the challenge of doubting the existence of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. We have some Muslims who are facing this challenge right now. Some young Muslims. They go to university, they study a subject called philosophy, and that's it. They have doubts enter their minds about the existence of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So how do we help them deal with those challenges? And then obviously the haters, Pauline Hanson and her crew, picking on Muslims, picking on Islam, trying to make life difficult for us. But at the end of the day, just like the Prophet ﷺ, if we want something of value, then we need to work hard for it. If we want Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to be pleased and satisfied with us, then it's going to require a lot of difficulty, a lot of challenges, a lot of perseverance. Have a look at the Olympics today. The amount of effort that these athletes have to make, and sacrifices that they have to make, and the effort that they have to put in, just to be able to put a round medal around their necks. What about the medal that we want Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to give to us on the Day of Judgment? How much more work and effort must we put into for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to be pleased with us, so that we can stand on the podium on the Day of Judgment, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala grants us His rahmah, so that we can enter paradise. And the Prophet ﷺ highlighted that when he said in the hadith by Anas ibn Malik radiallahu ta'ala an, قال رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم حفت الجنة بالمكاره وحفت النار بالشهوات. Jannah, paradise, is surrounded by things that the nafs dislikes, the nafs hates it. Because what is the nafs? Our nafs just wants to be satisfied. But the hellfire is surrounded by the shahawat, what the nafs desires, what it lusts after. So what we need to do is, we need to discipline the nafs. So it takes a lot of hard work to get to paradise. There's going to be a lot of difficulty, a lot of challenges. And the Prophet ﷺ showed us how he dealt with these hardships, with these difficulties. And there are many examples in the life of the Prophet ﷺ. I will just focus on one. And that was in the year of sorrow, Aam al-Hazm, when the Prophet ﷺ lost both his external and internal support, with the passing of his uncle Abu Talib, and the death of his beloved wife Khadija radiallahu ta'ala anha. And then the Prophet ﷺ decided to go to Taif to look for external support, after losing these two pillars of support for him. But when he went to Taif and he invited them to Islam, they rejected him. But not only did they reject his message and his invitation, they humiliated him. By the way, they expelled him out of their town. And when the Prophet ﷺ left and found sanctuary in an orchard, that's when the Prophet ﷺ turned to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and raised his hands. And this dua, and then he made this famous dua to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And subhanallah, every time I read this dua, it moves me. There are so many things to learn from this dua of the Prophet ﷺ to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. When he said, Allahumma ilayka ashku da'fa quwwati وقلة حيلتي وهواني على الناس يا أرحم الراحمين أنت رب المستضعفين وأنت ربي إلى من تكلني إلى بعيد يتجهمني أم إلى عدو ملكته أمري إن لم يكن بك علي غضب فلا أبالي ولكن عافيتك هي أوسع لي أعوذ بنور وجهك الذي أشرقت له الظلمات وصلح عليه أمر الدنيا والآخرة من أن ينزل بي غضبك أو يحل علي سخطك لك العتبى حتى ترضى ولا حول ولا قوة إلا بك. Subhanallah, the Prophet ﷺ in that moment of despair, feeling dejected, that he did not succeed in his mission, in his campaign of conveying the message of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that these people rejected him. The Prophet ﷺ turned to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and he said, "Oh Allah, I complain to you of my weakness." He didn't blame the West. He didn't blame Shaitan. He didn't blame the media. He didn't blame ASIO. He didn't blame the AFP. He blamed himself. He said, "Oh Allah, I complain to you of my weakness, my scarcity of resources. Perhaps I didn't prepare myself. Perhaps I didn't take what I needed to take with me to make this successful. And I complain to you of the humiliation that I have been subjected to by these people. O most merciful of those who are merciful, O Lord of the weak, O my Lord, to whom have you entrusted me? To a distant person who receives me with hostility, or to an enemy to whom you have granted authority over my affair? But as long as you are not angry with me, then I don't care. Then I'm not worried." So the first concern of the Prophet ﷺ was that the failure of his mission was because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala may have been upset with him. Did this happen because Allah was upset with him? So we need to learn the lessons from this. Sometimes challenges and difficulties happens to us, perhaps from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, because Allah is not happy with us. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is giving us an opportunity to do what? To turn to Him. As the Prophet ﷺ did, he turned to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And then he continued, "Your favor is of more relief to me. I seek refuge in the light of your face, by which all darkness is dispelled, and every affair of this world and the next is set aright, lest your anger or your displeasure descends upon me. I desire only your pleasure and satisfaction until you are pleased. There is no power and no might except with you." Subhanallah. And we are sitting here today because of the Prophet's mission, because of the ease that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave him after hardship, because the Prophet ﷺ knew how to deal with hardship. He knew how to deal with difficulties. He knew how to deal with these challenges that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala set for him. He turned to Allah. He didn't blame others. He looked to blame himself first. And then he said, "Okay, khalas, if it's not me, if I'm not to blame, then this is just the qadr of Allah. This is what Allah wants. It is only for me to convey the message. I need to leave the outcome to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Inna ma'al usri yusra." With hardship comes ease. The contemporary example of Inna ma'al usri yusra. With hardship comes ease. Sister Ruba. She's a Jordanian sister who grew up in a Christian family. She migrated. Her father was a priest in Jordan. They migrated to the US in the year 2002. While she was at college, one day she discussed Islam with her Muslim classmates. They started talking about the Qur'an and the Bible. She decided to go and have a look at the Bible to see if she can find any mistakes in it. That was her first motivation, was because now she wanted to defend her faith. So go and have a look at what the opposition has to say and see if we can find faults with it. She started reading the Qur'an from Surah Al-Fatiha, Al-Baqarah, Al-Imran, Al-Nisa, Al-Ma'idah, until she got to verses 82 and 83. And these two verses changed her life forever. And she read these verses, أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم, وَلَتَجِدَنَّ أَقْرَبَهُمْ مَوَدَّةً لِلَّذِينَ آمَنُوا الَّذِينَ قَالُوا إِنَّا نَصَارَى. You will find those closest to the believers who say that they are Christian. This verse just shocked her. Allah is telling her, she proclaims to be Christian, but they will be the closest in love to the believers, those who proclaim their Christianity, that they are Christian. And then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave the reason. ذَلِكَ بِأَنَّهُمْ قِسِّيسِينَ وَرُهْبَانَوْا وَأَنَّهُمْ لَا يَسْتَكْبِرُونَ. Because amongst them are some priests and monks who are not arrogant. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is giving some profile or benefit or acknowledgement of some of their priests and monks. So she continues to read the next ayah. وَإِذَا سَمِعُوا مَا أُنزِلَ إِلَى الرَّسُولِ. And when they listen to what has been revealed to the messenger, تَرَى أَعْيُنَهُمْ تَفِيضُ مِنَ الدَّمْعِ مِمَّا عَرَفُوا مِنَ الْحَقِّ. Their eyes overflow with tears because they have recognized the truth. يَقُولُونَ رَبَّنَا آمَنَّا فَاكْتُبْنَا مَعَ الشَّاهِدِينَ. And they then proclaim, our Lord, فَاكْتُبْنَا مَعَ الشَّاهِدِينَ. Record us with those who have witnessed to the truth. She said the Shahada immediately when she read these two verses. Immediately she became Muslim. Islam entered her heart. She found the truth. She was looking for it. She read the Qur'an to find faults in it, but in fact she found guidance. She found the truth. She then went home and she couldn't tell her family that she was now Muslim. Her father died 1 year after they arrived in the US. So her father was already dead, but her uncle was running a church in the US and she couldn't go home. So for 17 days she hid her Islam from her family. But unfortunately, this is the qadr of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. One night she was praying secretly. She was in the same room with her sister. She waited until her sister slept and then she prayed. But as she was praying, her sister woke up. And her sister just asked her, what are you doing? Why are you dressed like that? She said, I'm praying. But then the sister saw the Qur'an on her bed. And the sister ran out of the room angry, waking the whole family up to say, she has converted, she's become Muslim. They became so angry with her, her brother took a baseball bat and beat her, almost beat her to death. She still has the scars of that beating today. She managed to escape the room, grabbed her sister's mobile phone, went into the bathroom and rang 911 until the police came. The police came and they arrested her brother. As they were about to put him in the car, she said, no, I'm not going to lay any charges against him. She left with the police and she lived by herself. Her story is very long. But anyway, I'm going to cut it short. For 8 years she lived as a Muslim. She got married. She traveled overseas. Unfortunately, that marriage was a turning point in her life. It was a failed marriage. In her loneliness, coming back to the US, in her loneliness, another challenge that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala put in front of her was that the Muslim community where she was living started accusing her of being a spy. Now, imagine the sister, right? She's alone, she's isolated, no one wanted to have anything to do with her. She was vulnerable, and in her weakness, she just wanted to reset everything, to go back to the way her life was before she read the Qur'an. So she went back to Christianity. And when she went back to Christianity, her family capitalized on this to use her against Islam. And she allowed it to happen. But one day, they forced her, they encouraged her to study her religion, Christianity. She went to a college, she started studying theology. One day, the lecturer at university was talking about the Bible. And he made the claim, because they were discussing the legitimacy of what they have as the Bible, the authenticity of it. Has it been changed or has it not been changed? That's the question that came up for discussion. And the lecturer said that the Bible is changeable. That the revelation that was sent to Jesus could be changed. When he said that, those words didn't sit well with her. She said, this can't be. Because she's read the Qur'an. And she knows that what she's read has not been changed. What she has read before, when she became Muslim, was not the writings of any human being. That it had to be divine. And this again, this incident of that lecturer uttering those words, forced her back to the Qur'an. Back to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And she could not, although it was just a short period of time of 1.5 years where she was in this period of weakness and doubt, she recognized that she was still Muslim and she returned back to Islam. So it was the Qur'an, alhamdulillah, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala guided her to Islam, where she discovered the truth. And it was this incident of talking about revelation that brought her back to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and the Qur'an again. And today, she teaches Qur'an at an Islamic college in Texas. Inna ma'al usri yusra. With hardship comes ease. We don't know how we're being tested. We don't know how Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tests others. So what's the message today? What's the take-home message today? Forget about Pokemon Go. Forget about Clash of Clans. And whatever other games people are distracted and consumed with. The only game worth playing is Journey to Paradise. That's the only game that we need to be worried about. And this game has multiple levels, multiple challenges, multiple tasks that we need to do. As I mentioned before, whether there are temptations, whether there are rorts, whether it is criminality, whether it is drugs, crime, whether it is discriminators making our life difficult, whether the haters, it doesn't matter what these levels are. We need to persevere. We need to stay optimistic. We need to stay positive, just like the Prophet ﷺ did. And we need to seek Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will provide the ease after the hardship. But there are keys and tools that we must use. I mentioned some of them with the story of the Prophet ﷺ. I'm going to mention 3 keys and tools that we need to use. When we find ourselves in difficulty, for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to give us that relief, to give us that comfort, to give us that ease. One of the keys عن حذيفة رضي الله تعالى عنه قال كان النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم إذا حزبه أمر صلى. Hudayfa radiallahu ta'ala said, if the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam was distressed about anything, he would make salah, he would pray. Because salah reminds us of our connection with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and our journey to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And that only Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He is the only one we can turn to for help in times of distress and need. And the second tool, عن أبي هريرة رضي الله تعالى عنه قال قال رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم من سره أن يستجيب الله له عند الشدائد والكرب فليكثر الدعاء في الرخاء. Whoever would be pleased for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to answer him during times of hardship and difficulty, then let him increase his supplications during times of ease. Remember Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala when everything is going smoothly. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will remember you when times are bad. Remember Allah when times are good. Allah remembers us when times are bad. But forget Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala when times are bad. And then when we turn to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is not going to respond to us. أقول قولي هذا واستغفر الله لي ولكم فاستغفروه فيفوز المستغفرين وإن نجاة التائبين. الحمد لله نحمده ونستعينه ونستغفره ونؤمن به ونتوكل عليه أما بعد. The third tool, and there are many tools that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gives us. The third tool is sadaqah. And alhamdulillah, the UMA and Sheikh Shadi has given us the opportunity to present this tool to you today. To give you this key so that you can use it today, inshallah. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in the Qur'an, الَّذِينَ يُنْفِقُونَ أَمْوَالَهُم بِاللَّيْلِ وَالنَّهَارِ سِرًّا وَعَلَانِيَةً فَلَهُمْ أَجْرُهُمْ عِنْدَ رَبِّهِمْ وَلَا خَوْفٌ عَلَيْهِمْ وَلَا هُمْ يَحْزَنُونَ. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, whoever spends by night and by day, privately and openly, secretly and openly, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will provide for him 3 things. His reward will be with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, there will be no fear on him. وَلَا خَوْفٌ عَلَيْهِمْ وَلَا هُمْ يَحْزَنُونَ. And he will never have any sorrow, any sadness, any anxiety. 3 great things that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala provides for us. At times of difficulty, at times of hardship, we need that. We need to have the reward from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. We need to have no fear, to fear no one except Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And we should always remain optimistic, never having any sadness or deep depression that can paralyze you. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala provides that through what? Through charity. So we are collecting today, inshallah, for Panchpal Masjid, the construction of Panchpal Mosque in Matthew Street. Alhamdulillah, the construction started last October. The 2-level basement car park has been completed, and the mosque is currently being built. If you have an opportunity, drive past it. You can see the mosque structure coming up. So we're encouraging you today, inshallah, use this tool, use this key, give sadaqah. so that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala can help you with your difficulties, so that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala can help us with our challenges. Don't miss this opportunity today. Give as much or as little as you can, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will replace it to you. Don't fear sadaqah, don't fear charity. Allah will replace it. And when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala replaces something, it is much better than what it was before.